How one woman's worthless brass washer solved the problem that killed 300 RAF pilots. September 15, 1940, 11:47 in the morning, 22,000 feet above the Kent countryside, Pilot Officer Colin Gray had a Messerschmitt Bf 109 dead in his sights. 400 yards, closing fast. The German pilot hadn't seen him yet. Gray's thumb hovered over the firing button. 3 seconds to kill range. The Messerschmitt's nose dropped into a steep dive. Gray followed, pushed his stick forward, and felt the negative G lift him against his harness. Then his engine died. The Rolls-Royce Merlin coughed once and stopped. The propeller windmilled uselessly in the slipstream. The gun sight drifted off target. 1,030 horsepower gone in an instant. Gray cursed. He knew exactly what had happened. Every RAF pilot did. The carburetor had flooded. The engine starved for 2, maybe 3 seconds. His Spitfire became a glider. The Messerschmitt pulled out of its dive, vanished into the clouds. The German didn't even look back. He didn't need to. He knew the British couldn't follow. Gray's engine sputtered back to life, but his 5th kill had escaped, not because of skill, not because of luck, but because of British engineering. He landed at Biggin Hill 20 minutes later, filled out the same maintenance report he'd filed twice before. Engine cut out during negative G maneuver. Duration, 2.3 seconds. Enemy aircraft escaped. This report would join 2,300 others in a filing cabinet at the Air Ministry. 2,300 documented engine failures during the Battle of Britain. 2,300 moments when British pilots were helpless in the sky. Somewhere in that stack of reports was the answer to why so many young men weren't coming home. But finding the answer wasn't the problem. The problem was that nobody could fix it. Except one woman. Enter Beatrice Schilling. Her name was Beatrice Schilling. Most of the RAF had never heard of her. She worked alone in a laboratory at Farnborough, and she was about to break every rule in the Air Ministry to save lives. The problem was simple but deadly. The Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the heart of every Spitfire and Hurricane, used a carburetor with a float chamber. Under normal flight, gravity pulled fuel down into the engine. Perfect. But combat wasn't normal flight. When a pilot dove, negative G-forces threw everything upward, including the fuel. The fuel surged to the top of the float chamber. The float dropped to the bottom. The valve opened wide. Fuel flooded the system. The supercharger drowned. The engine died for a second, 2 seconds, sometimes long enough for a Messerschmitt to circle back and put cannon shells through your cockpit. The Germans had no such problem. Their Daimler-Benz DB601 used direct fuel injection. Rollover, dive, negative G, full throttle. Engine never skipped a beat. Their pilots had figured it out. They exploited it mercilessly. They called it the English disease. RAF engineers knew. The RAF knew. They had known since 1937. Engineers wrote reports, proposed modifications, and filed recommendations. Nothing happened. Production schedules, budgets, and committee debates, they all outweighed pilot safety. Then came the Battle of Britain. Between July and October 1940, RAF pilots documented engine cutouts in 43% of diving attacks, almost half. Squadron commanders estimated that 80 to 100 pilot deaths were caused directly by carburetor failures. Men are doing everything right. Men betrayed by their own engines. Rolls-Royce was working on a fix, a pressure carburetor, complete redesign. But estimated completion? Late 1943. The RAF couldn't wait 3 years. They were losing men faster than they could train replacements. Beatrice Schilling's early life. Beatrice Schilling was born in 1909 in Waterville, Hampshire. Her father was a butcher. Girls like her were expected to become secretaries, nurses, or shopkeepers. Beatrice had other plans. At 14, she bought a broken motorcycle with money saved from odd jobs. Her parents thought she wanted to ride it. She wanted to understand it. She stripped the engine down to its smallest components, rebuilt it on her bedroom floor, better than before. By 25, she was racing motorcycles at 106 miles per hour on concrete tracks. She earned the British Motorcycle Racing Club Gold Star, one of only 3 women ever to do so. Racing taught her what textbooks couldn't: how engines behaved under stress, how to feel a problem before the gauges show it. By 1940, she was the RAF's carburetor specialist, and the carburetors were killing pilots. The simple solution. January 1941. Schilling had an idea. Problem: too much fuel during negative G. Solution: restrict the fuel flow. Not too much, just enough to prevent flooding. She designed a brass disc with a small hole in the center, installed it in the fuel line before the carburetor, sized the hole perfectly. The engine gets the fuel it needs, but not enough to drown. She machined the prototype herself and tested 17 different sizes over 6 weeks. Bench tests were perfect. Engine cutouts went from seconds to a fraction of a heartbeat. But bench tests weren't combat. She needed real dogfights. Taking a risk. Installing an unauthorized modification on an RAF aircraft? Court-martial offense. Air Ministry required 6 months of testing, committees, and paperwork. Far too slow. Pilots were dying every week. Schilling had a choice: wait for permission or act. March 17, 1941. She loaded her Norton motorcycle with tools and brass restrictors, rode 40 miles through the English countryside to RAF Biggin Hill. Ground crews were preparing morning patrols. Spitfires and Hurricanes warmed their engines. She found Chief Mechanic Sergeant Harris, one with 6 years of experience, showed him the brass disc, explained the physics, told him she needed it installed without authorization, without paperwork, without anyone in command knowing. Harris turned the restrictor over in his oil-stained hands. "How do you know it works?" he asked. 6 weeks of perfect bench tests. "Bench tests aren't combat." "I know, that's why I'm here." He looked at the young pilots climbing into cockpits. 11 of his men had already died from engine failures. He didn't hesitate. "If this works, I don't care if the king hasn't approved it." He picked up his welding kit and walked to the first Spitfire. The first test. Flight Lieutenant Al Deer, 54 combat missions, 7 confirmed kills, twice shot down, once survived a mid-air collision, 4 times reported engine failures during dives. March 17, 1941, his Spitfire became the first fitted with Schilling's restrictor. He didn't know it. Harris welded it in, invisible unless you knew where to look. Deer climbed in, taxied, lifted off. Schilling's heart pounded. If the restrictor failed, Deer would die, and it would be on her. 2 hours later, the Spitfire returned. No smoke, no stutter. Deer grinned, not tired, not relieved, but amazed. He'd encountered 2 Bf-109s. Both tried to escape with standard German tactics. Deer dove, full negative G, stick forward. The engine never stuttered. Full power. Closed to 150 yards before German pilots realized something was wrong. He'd hit one of them. Tail shredded. German limped home. The miracle spreads. Word spread like wildfire. Within 48 hours, every aircraft at Biggin Hill had restrictors. Then Hornchurch, Kenley, Tangmere, Northolt, Manston, 43 stations in 4 weeks. Schilling trained installation teams, supervised every weld, and measured every hole. Rode through rain, sleep-deprived, barely eating. Sometimes German bombs fell nearby. Some stations resisted. She showed them Air Vice Marshal Park's direct authorization. They complied. By April 20, 1941, every Spitfire and Hurricane in Fighter Command had a restrictor. 2,847 Merlin engines modified in 4 weeks. The RAF pilots called it Miss Schilling's Orifice. Immediate results. Before the restrictor, the engine cut out in 41% of dives. Kill-to-loss ratio 1.4 to 1. After, cutouts 0.3%. Kill-to-loss ratio 3.1 to 1. Confidence returned. Pilots dove without hesitation. Flight Lieutenant Robert Stanford Tuck. It's like flying a different aircraft. No hesitation. The Merlin runs perfectly. Squadron Leader Douglas Bader. Before Schilling, we fought defensively. After, we fought aggressively. No hesitation. She gave us confidence back. Al Deer, the first guinea pig. I wasn't angry. I was grateful. She risked everything so thousands wouldn't die. German Luftwaffe intelligence noticed. By May 1941, manuals quietly removed the section about exploiting British engine failures. The English disease was gone. Legacy. The restrictor remained in use until 1943, some until the end of the war. Pilots trusted it. Ground crews knew how to install it. Cost? Less than £1. A brass washer kept men alive for 4 years. Schilling continued innovating. Cold weather mods for Russia, high-altitude adjustments, and supercharger efficiency. Every project saved lives. None achieved the fame of the restrictor. She retired in 1969, died November 18, 1990, age 81. Obituaries focused on the brass washer, Miss Schilling's orifice. One woman, one motorcycle, one brass washer, thousands of lives saved. Courage over bureaucracy, action over procedure. Beatrice Schilling changed history. If this story inspired you, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Every like helps share forgotten heroes like Schilling with the world. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Let's honor her courage together.